Welcome to AI for Beginners Demystified, the podcast that makes artificial intelligence simple, practical, and profitable for small business owners. Each week, we turn complex AI concepts into real-world strategies you can use to grow your business. Hosted by the team at Internet Marketing Services. This is AI for Beginners Demystified, where the future of business starts today. Let's get started.
Welcome to AI for Beginners Demystified, the podcast that makes artificial intelligence simple, practical, and exciting. I'm Rick Samara.
And I'm Paul Stober. Today, our mission is to unpack a profoundly fascinating shift in the business landscape. We are digging into this huge stack of research detailing how voice AI is completely rewiring customer experiences.
Yeah, and sales operations too, right from the ground up.
Exactly. Whether you are, running a business looking to scale or you are simply a consumer just trying to navigate modern commerce, this is absolutely reshaping your daily life.
It really is. It's everywhere.
And there is a statistic buried in our sources that, it completely recontextualizes the scale of this shift. Businesses that are leveraging voice AI have seen up to a 30% boost in sales efficiency.
30%. That is just huge.
Right? That is a massive leap, particularly in notoriously low conversion areas like cold calling campaigns.
It is a staggering leap, and establishing the reality of that number is crucial for us today because, we aren't theorizing about the year 2040 here.
No, not at all.
We aren't discussing some distant abstract concept. This is a present-day, ground-level competitive advantage. The goal of our discussion today is to explore how this technology actually functions in the real world to thread a very difficult needle.
Which is what? Exactly.
Balancing ruthless, bottom-line efficiency with a surprisingly personalized human-feeling interaction.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand a 30% leap in efficiency, we have to look really closely at the underlying architecture. Definitely, we are a long way from the clunky, rigid answering machines that, forced you to speak like a robot just to be understood.
Oh yeah, say yes or no.
Right, exactly. To make that leap, the sources point to three specific technological pillars. We've got hidden Markov models, deep neural networks, and natural language processing.
Those are the big three.
Yeah. So for someone who doesn't spend their days reading computer science journals, how are these three components actually processing human speech?
So, to understand that, we really need to look at what happens when you speak into a phone. You aren't transmitting words, right? You are transmitting raw sound pressure waves.
Okay.
A microphone captures those analog waves and turns them into digital signals. Now, the deep neural networks, or DNNs, they tackle the first massive hurdle, which is acoustic environments.
Meaning background noise.
Exactly. Like if you were sitting in a crowded coffee shop, your voice is competing with espresso machines and background chatter. A DNN functions through these complex layers of artificial neurons.
So it's filtering out the coffee shop?
Yeah, exactly. The first layer might analyze the raw audio frequencies. Then the next layer identifies the specific frequencies that match the human vocal tract.
Oh, wow.
And then subsequent layers isolate your voice from the background noise. It is essentially mathematically filtering the audio based on, patterns it has learned from millions of hours of audio data.
Okay, so the neural network strips away the chaos and isolates the actual human sounds, but recognizing a sound isn't the same thing as recognizing a word, right?
Not at all. And that is where the hidden Markov models come into play, the HMMs.
Because human speech is messy.
Incredibly messy. We mumble, we slur words together. We have, thousands of different accents. HMMs don't just listen to a sound and look it up in a dictionary. They use probabilistic modeling.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, they break your speech down into phones, the smallest. If the model identifies the th sound, it uses mathematical probability to predict that the next sound is highly likely to be a vowel.
So it's guessing?
Educated guessing, yeah. It maps out sequences of sounds based on statistical likelihoods to transcribe the audio into text. And it does this with remarkable speed and accuracy, even if your pronunciation isn't perfect.
It's predicting what you are saying based on mathematical sequences. That's wild. But we still have one piece missing, I think.
Right?
Because even if the system perfectly transcribes my sentence, a transcript is just a string of text.
Yeah.
A computer doesn't inherently know what those words mean in relation to each other.
Which brings us to natural language processing, or NLP. This is the technology that actually extracts meaning and context from the transgrowth text. Language is just full of ambiguity.
Definitely. Give me an example.
So if you transcribe the sentence, I watched the dog bark at the trees bark.
Oh, right. The word bark is there twice.
Exactly. The system sees the word bark twice. NLP uses contextual analysis, looking at the surrounding words, to understand that the first instance is an action a dog takes, and the second instance is the outer layer of a tree.
It analyzes the intent behind the phrasing,
Yes, and tying this entire ecosystem together is machine learning.
meaning the underlying models are continuously updating their own parameters based on new data.
It is entirely adaptive. Every time the system encounters a novel phrasing or a unique regional dialect or a new context, it adjusts its internal weights.
So it's not hard coded?
No, it doesn't rely on a programmer to write a new rule for every possible human interaction. It learns from its own operational history.
Quick question for med spa owners. How many calls did you miss this week? Because every unanswered call could be a $500 to $3,000 client booking somewhere else. That's why med spas are turning to Voice AI Plus, an AI-powered receptionist and follow-up system that answers every call 24/7, books appointments, and follows up automatically. No voicemail, no missed opportunities, no extra staff. And it doesn't stop there. Voice AI Plus also includes your CRM, booking calendar, email automation, and review management, all in one system. Try it free for 30 days and see the calls, the bookings, and the ROI for yourself. Visit the link in the description to learn more today.
So instead of a traditional phone tree that just listens for a rigid yes or no, yeah, and completely breaks down if you say something like, yeah, I guess so, this is like having a hyper-fast translator.
That's a great way to put it.
A translator who doesn't just know the dictionary definition of the language, but can actively read the room and learn from past conversations to grasp your actual intent.
What's fascinating here is how that continuous adaptive learning fundamentally alters business operations on a mechanical level. Consider the cognitive load on a traditional human sales or customer service rep.
It's a lot. They're juggling a dozen things at once.
Right. They have to actively listen to a complex problem, mentally formulate a solution, navigate multiple software interfaces, and simultaneously type accurate notes into a database.
Which is why there are so many mistakes.
Exactly. Manual input under that kind of cognitive strain is incredibly error prone. We've all had to repeat our account number 3 times because of a typo.
Oh, absolutely. It's the worst.
But with this technology, you have accurate, consistent data capture happening autonomously. The system is parsing the intent, extracting the relevant entities like names, dates, or product numbers, and logging them flawlessly in the background.
Which shifts the narrative from how the AI understands us to what it actually does with that perfectly captured data during a live interaction. Because the sources indicate this technology is acting as an active invisible co-pilot during live calls.
The invisible co-pilot, yes.
Which seems to be where the real efficiency gains are happening, right?
The automation of administrative friction is where you see the immediate volume increase. For a sales team, time spent not talking to a customer is lost revenue.
Just dead air.
Exactly. Voice AI automates the predictive dialing process, virtually eliminating the idle time between calls. It handles the initial intent recognition to route calls instantly to the correct department without human intervention.
So no more waiting on hold just to be transferred?
Right, and it can independently manage the complex calendar logistics of scheduling follow-up appointments.
It completely absorbs the bureaucratic overhead, but the research points to something far more dynamic happening while the human representative is actually speaking to the customer. We're looking at real-time transcription coupled with intelligent prompts.
The mechanics of this are quite remarkable. Let's say a customer calls in with a complex billing dispute.
Always a fun call.
Yeah. Traditionally, the human rep puts the customer on hold, navigates through a legacy database, queries the specific invoice, reads through the history, and then returns to the call.
Taking like 5 minutes.
At least. Now, the NLP engine is transcribing and analyzing the customer's speech in real time. The millisecond it recognizes the intent parameters for a billing dispute, it queries the database autonomously.
While the customer is still talking.
Exactly. It pulls the relevant invoice, highlights the disputed charge, and flashes the resolution protocol directly onto the human representative screen before the customer has even finished their sentence.
That is insane. It collapses a 5-minute data retrieval process into a fraction of a second.
It really does.
And the sources detail that it goes beyond just retrieving data. It actively coaches the human representative mid-conversation.
Yes, the coaching aspect is huge.
Like, if I raise an objection about the price of a service, the AI instantly cross-references my objection against historical sales data, determines the most statistically successful counter-argument, and then prompts the human rep with a dynamic script on how to navigate my hesitation.
It guides the conversational flow by identifying patterns of success from thousands of previous interactions and feeding them to the representative in the moment.
I have to introduce a hypothesis here because looking at this from a consumer standpoint, it feels incredibly precarious.
Precarious how?
Well, if I am trying to make a genuine purchasing decision and I realize an artificial intelligence is dynamically generating scripts to counter my specific psychological objections, my trust plummets.
Okay, I see what you mean.
It sounds less like hyper-efficient customer service and more like, I don't know, automated manipulation. It risks making the entire interaction feel engineered to force a conversion rather than actually solve my problem.
It is a highly rational concern. The anxiety around algorithmic manipulation is profound right now. Right. However, the data presented in our sources indicates a really counterintuitive outcome. The application of machine learning in these environments tends to drastically increase the feeling of personalization.
Really?
Yes, which actively builds trust rather than eroding it.
Okay, let's test that. How does an algorithm generating a script result in a more authentic feeling of personalization?
By bridging the continuity gap. One of the most frustrating aspects of modern consumerism is the feeling of being a stranger to a company you've done business with for years.
Oh, yeah. Having to explain who you are every single time you call?
Exactly. The AI builds a continuous, real-time knowledge graph of the customer's interactions. The source material provides a clear example. Imagine a customer whose purchasing history or past inquiries demonstrate a shifting preference toward eco-friendly products.
So the system identifies that trend in the data?
It tags that preference vector. The next time that customer initiates a call, the AI instantly recognizes the profile, flags the eco-friendly preference, and prompts the representative to bypass the generic product catalog entirely.
Oh, I see.
The rep is guided to highlight sustainable options immediately. From the customer's vantage point, they aren't being manipulated by an algorithm, they are being understood by a brand.
They don't have to explain their values again.
Or repeat their past interactions. The AI is simply granting the human representative flawless recall, which allows the conversation to start at a much higher level of mutual understanding.
It's eliminating the repetitive explanations we all hate.
Exactly.
But, if it works as seamlessly as you were describing and it yields a 30% efficiency boost while making customers feel deeply understood, it begs an obvious question.
Why isn't everyone doing it?
Exactly. Why isn't every business on the planet deploying this today?
Because the friction of implementation is immense. The market is full of software vendors selling the illusion that voice AI is a plug-and-play solution.
Just buy and plug it in, right?
Right, but you do not just purchase an enterprise AI license, turn it on, and watch your sales team shatter records.
What is the primary roadblock when a company tries to turn this on?
The reality of legacy architecture. The vast majority of established businesses run their operations on older customer relationship management databases.
CRMs from like a decade ago.
Exactly. These systems are rigid, They rely on highly structured relational data tables. Voice AI, on the other hand, operates on dynamic, unstructured data transcripts, intent vectors, acoustic models.
So they don't play nice together?
No. When you try to force a modern NLP engine to communicate with a database built in 2014, the systems reject each other.
They're speaking entirely different structural languages.
To solve this, companies have to build extensive custom APIs or application programming interfaces and deploy complex middleware.
Middleware.
Yeah, middleware acts as a real-time translator. It takes the high-dimensional data generated by the AI and maps it into the rigid tables of the legacy database, so the systems can actually sync up.
That sounds expensive.
It is a massive, costly IT undertaking. Furthermore, the human element of adoption is highly disruptive.
Because you're changing the fundamental workflow of the entire sales floor.
Dropping an advanced real-time AI tool onto a representative screen without proper training creates cognitive overload. It actually slows them down.
Oh, that makes sense. It's too much new information at once.
This is why the sources heavily emphasize the necessity of phased rollouts. A business must deploy the technology to a small, controlled cohort first.
Just test it with a few people.
Right. This allows the IT department to monitor the APIs for data latency, and it allows management to study how the human staff actually interacts with the prompts. You scale gradually to minimize operational shock.
So the technical integration is a massive hurdle, but there's a much deeper vulnerability we have to address, which is the sheer volume of data this technology requires.
The privacy issue.
Yeah. We just established that the AI builds flawless recall of my purchasing history, analyzes my acoustic vocal patterns, and stores my behavioral vectors to predict my preferences. The line between a highly personalized consumer experience and a catastrophic privacy violation is incredibly thin.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the privacy paradox is the single greatest existential threat to the viability of voice AI.
Really? The biggest threat?
Without a doubt. If a consumer base decides that a company's data aggregation is predatory, the trust evaporates, and that 30% efficiency gain vanishes with it. Businesses have to operate with absolute verifiable transparency.
Beyond just posting a generic privacy policy on a website, what do these strict data protection measures actually look like at the architectural level?
The sources outline a non-negotiable framework. Technologically, it requires advanced encryption standards. The audio data and the resulting transcripts must be encrypted both in transit while moving between the user and the servers and at rest.
Meaning, even one is just sitting on a hard drive.
Securely stored so that even if a server is compromised, the data is entirely unreadable to bad actors. Legally, it demands strict compliance with overarching data protection frameworks like the GDPR in Europe and the CCPA in California.
Which are pretty strict rules.
Very strict. They mandate how long data can be stored and guarantee the consumer's right to have their data deleted.
It establishes rigid boundaries around the digital footprint.
But the most effective psychological tool, detailed in our research, is the implementation of transparent opt-in features.
Asking for explicit permission rather than quietly harvesting data in the background.
Yes. The system clearly explains what data is being collected and why, giving the consumer the agency to share or withhold it.
And do people actually opt in?
The research shows a fascinating behavioral response. When users are given granular control over their data, their acceptance of the underlying technology actually increases.
Because they feel in control.
Exactly. The transparency mitigates the anxiety. Companies pair this user-facing transparency with rigorous internal safeguards, such as requiring two-factor authentication or 2FA for the employees. Right. For any employee attempting to access the AI dashboard, ensuring that only authorized personnel can view the analyzed data.
So, assuming a company navigates the complex API integration, trains their staff without causing a revolt, and implements airtight encryption and opt-in protocols, they launch the system. Yes, the trap here seems to be treating the launch as the finish line, because a traditional software application operates identically on day 1000 as it did on day 1, but an AI model relies entirely on the data it consumes.
That distinction is critical. Voice AI systems are highly susceptible to phenomena known as concept drift and data drift.
Concept drift?
Yeah, if you train a model exclusively on data from 2024 by 2026, the cultural lexicon is changed. Slang evolves, new product lines are introduced, and consumer pain points shift.
People just talk differently.
If the underlying algorithms are not constantly fed fresh, high quality data sets, the AI's predictive accuracy begins to rapidly degrade. It will start misunderstanding intent and prompting representatives with outdated solutions.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It shifts the paradigm of software management. You almost have to treat this AI architecture less like an IT asset and more like a new employee on the floor.
That's a great analogy.
Right. It requires continuous performance reviews, ongoing education, and structured feedback to maintain his competency.
That is a highly accurate framework for understanding AI maintenance. The system requires closed feedback loops. If the NLP engine misinterprets a customer's intent or prompts a representative with an ineffective counter-argument, the human rep must be able to flag that failure.
Oh, so the human corrects the machine.
Exactly. That tagged error is then fed back into the training data so the adaptive learning mechanisms can recalibrate the model's weights.
It demands human in the loop oversight.
And rigorous quality assurance protocols before any algorithmic update is deployed. A hallucinating AI that promises a customer a refund policy that doesn't exist creates massive legal liability.
Yeah, we've seen that happen in the news.
But the sources highlight a fascinating inversion of this dynamic. The AI isn't just subject to QA, it actively performs QA on the human workforce.
Wait, it analyzes the performance of the representatives it is assisting.
Yes, the AI evaluates thousands of hours of human sales calls, analyzing metrics like the talk to listen ratio, sentiment shifts in the customer's voice, and how effectively the human rep handled specific objections. Wow. It identifies granular areas where a representative is struggling and provides actionable feedback to management. It creates a symbiotic environment where the AI handles the data processing volume and then uses that data to refine the human's ability to build nuanced relationships.
It essentially turns every single call into a training module for both the machine and the human. You know, if you're listening to this from the business perspective, the takeaway is clear. Voice AI is the infrastructure required to scale operational volume and personalization simultaneously.
It breaks the old paradigm.
Yeah, breaking the paradigm that better service mandates a massive increase in headcount. And as a consumer, when you interact with a company and find the experience shockingly fast and tailored to your specific history, you are directly interacting with these neural networks and predictive models in real time.
And the crazy thing is, the current capabilities are merely the foundation.
There's more.
The final inset from our sources points toward an impending evolution in sales operations, and that's the integration of voice AI with augmented reality, or AR.
Okay, we've seen AR used in siloed applications for a few years, like, using your phone's camera to place a 3D model of a couch in your living room, right? But combining that spatial mapping technology with a real-time conversational AI fundamentally changes the friction of remote purchasing.
It creates a seamless, multimodal interaction. Imagine that same scenario. Yes, you are looking at your smartphone screen, visualizing how a specific couch fits into your living room space.
Right.
Simultaneously, you are having a fluid, natural conversation with the voice AI agent about your aesthetic preferences. You tell the AI, the dimensions work, but I need something that complements my dark blue walls.
And the system processes that intent instantly.
The NLT engine analyzes your request, queries the inventory database, and instantly updates the augmented reality projection on your screen to display the couch in a complementary fabric.
While you're still looking at it?
Yes, while the voice agent simultaneously breaks down the pricing difference for the new material, it merges the conversational intuition of a highly skilled salesperson with the immersive visual confirmation of a physical showroom.
It turns a standard customer service call into a highly sophisticated multisensory consultation.
It represents a massive leap in consumer convenience. But it also raises a profound question, and it is something I really believe you, the listener, should carefully consider as this technology scales.
What's the question?
Well, we have spent this podcast exploring how AI algorithms, neural networks, and comprehensive data profiles are perfectly calibrated to anticipate our desires. They remember our specific preferences, and they proactively counter our psychological objections before we fully articulate them.
Right.
If this technological architecture becomes entirely frictionless, if the AI knows exactly what words to say and exactly what immersive AR visuals to display to guarantee a conversion, how does that ultimately impact our autonomy?
That is a heavy thumb.
Are we still making independent, critical decisions as consumers? Or are we being flawlessly guided along a path of maximum conversion by algorithms that understand our behavioral patterns better than we do?
We are entering an era of deeply engineered persuasion. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. Keep questioning the technology that is shaping your world. Keep looking under the hood, and we will catch you next time.
So, when you zoom out, the big story here is simple but powerful. Voice AI isn't some future concept. It's already transforming how businesses operate right now.
Yeah, and the stat that really stuck with me, up to a 30% boost in sales efficiency. That alone tells you this isn't incremental, it's a major shift.
Exactly. And what makes that possible is the combination of three core technologies: deep neural networks, hidden Markov models, and natural language processing.
Right? Basically, systems that can hear through noise, predict what you're saying, even if it's messy, and actually understand meaning and intent.
And once that understanding happens, that's where the real value kicks in. The AI becomes an invisible co-pilot, handling admin work, retrieving data instantly, and even coaching reps in real time.
That part is wild. Instead of putting customers on hold, the system is pulling up answers while the conversation is still happening.
Which eliminates friction, and friction is what kills conversions.
But here's where it gets interesting. You'd think all this automation would feel robotic, but it actually creates a more personalized experience.
Because the AI remembers everything: preferences, past interactions, behavior patterns. It gives businesses something they've never really had before: perfect memory.
So instead of repeating yourself every time you call, the conversation just picks up where it left off.
Exactly. And that builds trust if it's handled correctly.
And that's the catch, because implementation is not easy. Legacy systems, complex integrations, employee training, it's a heavy lift.
Not to mention privacy concerns. If businesses aren't transparent about how they use data, that trust disappears instantly.
So you've got this balancing act, massive efficiency gains on one side and potential trust risks on the other.
And even after deployment, the work doesn't stop. These systems need constant retraining to keep up with changing language and behavior.
Which is why you said something earlier that really clicked. This isn't just software, it's more like a new employee.
Exactly. It needs feedback, supervision, and ongoing improvement.
And what's fascinating is it goes both ways. The AI is also analyzing the human reps, helping improve their performance.
So every interaction becomes a learning loop for both the machine and the human.
All right, let's break this down into the biggest takeaways for anyone listening.
First, voice AI is delivering real, measurable results today, not in the future.
Second, it works because it removes friction, faster responses, no idle time, and real-time support.
Third, it actually enhances personalization by giving businesses perfect memory and context.
Fourth, implementation is complex. This is not plug and play. You need strategy, integration, and training.
And finally, trust is everything. Transparency, data security, and user control determine whether this succeeds or fails.
So let's make this practical. What should someone actually do with this information this week?
Here's a simple but powerful step. Audit your current customer communication process.
Meaning, look at where time is being wasted.
Exactly. Identify where your team is, repeating the same information, putting customers on hold, manually entering data, missing opportunities during live conversations.
Because those are the exact areas where voice AI creates the biggest gains.
Right? You don't start by buying AI. You start by identifying friction.
And once you see the friction clearly, you can start mapping where AI can remove it.
At the end of the day, voice AI is about scaling two things at once: efficiency and personalization, something that used to be impossible.
But as it gets more powerful, the real question becomes,
Are we still making our own decisions, or are we being guided more than we realize?
and That's a question worth thinking about.
Thanks for listening to AI for Beginners Demystified, brought to you by Internet Marketing Services, helping small businesses harness the power of AI to work smarter and grow faster. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Be sure to check out the description below for valuable links and resources, including free tools, learning guides, and ways to start applying AI in your business today. And visit internetmarketingservices.com to explore even more AI tools, tips, and resources. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep demystifying AI.